Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's Cedarville Stories Podcast. I'm Mark Weinstein, and today on the program, I'm talking with Greg and Erica Smith. Greg is the head volleyball coach for the Yellow Jackets, and Erica works in the Cedarville School of Nursing. But their story goes far beyond athletics and healthcare, as we'll talk about life and death issues they faced several years ago. So sit back for my conversation with Greg and Erica Smith on this week's Cedarville Stories Podcast. Greg and Erica, it's great to have you on the podcast. And before we get to the heart of today's story, which is health-related and your spiritual journey, I think it's important for our guests who are watching and listening to better understand who you are as people. So I know you both work at Cedarville University. Share with us your roles, how long you've been at Cedarville. Let's start with Erica.
Oh, okay. I work in the School of Nursing as the executive administrative assistant. So I'm actually the assistant to the dean, to Dr. Angie Mickle. And I've been here 6 years. The way we got here is through Greg, through his job.
Sure. So like in your role as an admin, what are some functions that you perform daily?
I'm pretty behind the scenes. So that's fortunate and maybe unfortunate. It's great that Greg has the team, because if he didn't have the team, my student interaction wouldn't be probably so great, because I do a lot of billing, anything financial, accreditation, credentialing, stuff like that.
It's important.
Yeah.
How about you, Greg? What's your role here?
Role is
the fun one.
Yeah, head volleyball coach here at Cedarville. Been here for 8 years. And it's been a great 8 years so far, and just continue to look forward to the future in it. When
you say it's been a great 8 years, I'm probably in many ways, but from a volleyball perspective, what brings you great joy, and how do you measure success as you look at your players and your teams?
To answer the last part of your question, what brings joy is just getting into the gym with this young group of women that we've been able to hopefully transform, or as they go into their journey of 4 years away from parents,
right? And
just seeing their transformation from a high school student and become an adult, and just seeing from freshman to senior year it's a lot of fun. And I think, being here at Cedarville is just a special case or situation, I should say, in this, in the fact that, where else can we be at a Christian university to have an impact, to be able to go through life together, to be able to disciple them. And so that's the reason why I say these 8 years have been joyful in that regard. It's just in so many aspects off the court, but also it brings joy when we are on the court.
Sure. So before Cedarville, where were you, and how did the Lord bring you to Cedarville University?
Well, it was really because of Greg's move. So, for his job. So I did medical practice management for 25 years. So my background, all over because of Greg's job.
Oh, okay.
So basically being a coach, we're like a military family. So we're moving, we're moving constantly, not sometimes by our own wishes, but sometimes it is what it is.
Yeah.
So we were at University of Toledo before here. And we were there for 10 years, and after my 10th season, the AD decided to go a different direction.
Yeah, you were the head coach?
I was the head coach there.
For all 10 years?
All 10 years.
Okay.
And it was one of those decisions that, we had to figure out what do we want to do, or where do we want to go, I should say. As Erica's mentioned, she had a great job. She does a wonderful job as an office manager, runs practices and stuff. And we had to make a decision. It's like, where are we going to go? And I was interviewing to be an insurance agent.
Were you really?
Yeah. And so I thought, well, maybe
I could keep my job.
Yeah. So
because I really loved my job.
Yeah. So we could stay in Toledo. Our kids were, especially our oldest, Peyton, she was starting high school. She just finished her freshman year in high school, and Reagan was coming up soon into high school. And we had to make a decision: do we stay, or do we, what do we do? Went through a lot of the interviewing, different interviews to find a job out, outside of Toledo in the coaching world. And the last kind of straw was becoming an insurance agent.
Okay.
And then finally,
which I was very much like, okay, he's done athletics for ever since I've known him. Because when we started dating, he was an assistant coach at Ohio State.
Okay.
So, And we've been to Virginia Tech, Notre Dame. So insurance agent, like that was just not clocking with me. That was just definitely not something that I thought was going to be. And I'm a nurse by trade, so I can always do, my fallback could always be nursing, but I mean, I'd done medical practice management for 25 years. That was really, my love and my passion and wanting to, be in a role like that. So coming to Cedarville, though, it was interesting when we transitioned here. Greg had even at the secular colleges that he coached at, would ask other coaches to do Bible studies and stuff with them. So our move to Cedarville was really, for the people that knew us, was really kind of a no-brainer. It
Natural.
was it was completely natural. It was like, oh, that totally fits, because it was so much different. But if you look at it from the lens of, okay, you've been at Ohio State, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech as a coach, and and then you're ending up in Cedarville, but people that knew us because of our Christian faith, it was definitely something that they're like, that's a total fit.
So how did the Lord bring you to Cedarville?
Well, I think it was kind of that last straw we're talking about. It's like being an insurance agent or just doing something completely different. But then Erica was just like, she goes, what do you identify as? And she's very poignant about it. It's like, you have to figure this out, because we're to the end of our process of going through interviews and stuff like that. And I said, all I know is being a coach. He said, well, then we're going to continue on with this. And Cedarville just happened that, God's timing more than anything.
There you go.
Because all the jobs that I interviewed for, it was head coaching, assistant coaching, and everything. And it was to the point where it just wasn't the right time. Fortunately, unfortunately per se, Doug Walters, who was the previous coach, had to leave because he had to make a decision for his family so that they could live closer together because of his wife's job. She was in Kentucky teaching. Oh. He was up here. They were traveling 45 minutes to an hour each direction, and God opened a door for Doug and his family to go down to Palm Beach Atlantic,
right,
which opened up the door here at the very ending point of our decision making. It's like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And it was Erica's question. It's like that, just pushed it over the edge. It's like, we're still going to stay in the coaching world and stick with it. So
from the time that Toledo said we're moving in a different direction to the time that Cedarville was put on your radar as a possibility, how long of a time period was that?
It was 6 months. I got let go in November, right before Thanksgiving, and we didn't get the job here until first week of May.
That's hard, isn't it, to not know where money is coming from? And as a guy, it's like, do you feel like you're not really caring for your family?
Yeah, our marriage has been that we share. And so we pick up for each other. And so, it's gone both ways for us. And so in this situation, more than just this situation, Erica has always been very supportive of my job and the things that go along with it.
Yeah.
And she was very supportive in this and had a great job at Toledo, that we were going to be okay. And, filling out government forms along the way taught me some stuff about being unemployed. So it was all right. It all worked out.
Yeah. And, being a coach, you said that's all you knew. Well, that was your dad too, right? And you're following your dad's footsteps as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was the one that suggested I get out of business and go back to school to get my secondary education degree and to teach and coach basketball. But, obviously I'm not coaching basketball. And again, I've always felt like God has a sense of humor, and this was part of his sense of humor of just taking me from coaching boys basketball to women volleyball. But it's been a great ride for the last 20 plus years. I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Yeah, it's a great story. So let's transition to really the heart of today's story. And really that centers around Erica's health. So 4 years earlier, 4 years before you came to Cedarville, Erica, your life changed drastically during a time when your mother's health was declining. You flew from Toledo to Minnesota to be with her. While in Minnesota, you went to the emergency room to be treated for bronchitis and pneumonia. Obviously, those are serious issues, but curable. Take us through that stage of your story, because that's where everything really begins.
Well, yeah, my mom was diagnosed in 2014 with pancreatic cancer, and I had just started a new management job with Mercy Health, actually.
Okay.
And I think the stress of starting a new job, but then knowing that my mom had the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, they threw out the 6 months. And, just knowing that it was a stressful time. So I was flying back and forth. My mom was a nurse as well.
Okay.
So we knew what all that stuff looked like, right? And I would get a call that, mom's declining. She entered into hospice, and that at that time period, it was, towards the end, and it was getting towards that 6 months because it was like May when she was diagnosed.
Okay.
And just that stress of that being up with her. So at that time we were doing shifts with her where I was at the house with her, kind of doing the night shift, and my dad and my sisters were doing kind of the day shift. And I think I just got worn down from travel and the stress, and we had 3 kids and, trying to do all that. I knew since I just started a new job, I was worried that they're not going to, be sympathetic to this big need of being away. But in the grand scheme of things, when there's a 6 months expiration date, you have to make time for things. So,
you do.
I ended up getting bronchitis and pneumonia. I've had pneumonia when I was in 5th grade, so it wasn't something I was a stranger to. But what was interesting was they gave me Zithromax in the ER. I actually went to the ER twice, and they gave me Zithromax. They handed that to me, and I've taken Zithromax many, many times before, but for some reason that time I had an allergic reaction that swelled up my lips and started to do my airway, but that really wasn't until I had gotten home, probably about 2 days after I started the Zithromax.
So even though you've taken this drug before and it helped, it wasn't helping you this time. Actually, it was exacerbating the issue, right?
Right.
So you flew back from Minnesota to Toledo.
Yeah.
And things continued to get worse. Greg, how were you responding as you saw Erica dealing with this? What thoughts were going through your mind? What concerns did you have?
The biggest concerns was just seeing, the swelling that she was getting around her face. That was probably the first thing, the lips, the ears. And I knew something wasn't right. And of course, Erica's like the professional. She's the pro when it comes to the medical side of things. It's like if she's worried about it, then we're worried about it. And so when that night, she got home, went to bed, then woke up and said, "You have to take me to the ER." And so with that being...
Actually, I said, I'm driving myself to the ER. Yeah. We had littles that had to get on the bus in the morning.
So I
actually drove myself to the ER. I woke up about 3 a.m. I had put ice packs. So ridiculous. I had put ice packs on my face trying to get the swelling to go down.
Yeah.
I think it just wasn't clicking with me that I was having this really bad allergic reaction. And I started to have breathing problems in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to go back to work after being gone for a week the next morning. And so I was kind of trying to, if I can just bring it down, I'll go into work. And I've been gone for a week because I've been back in Minnesota. And so, yeah.
So in your mind, either one of your minds, was this a life-threatening situation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was almost completely obstructed. So when I came into the ER, they just looked at me in the window and took me straight back. They just said there was no triage; it was straight back to the bay. And of course, University of Toledo Medical Center is where I went. It's a teaching hospital, so not only was I in the ER with the on-call doc. ER doc, but then there's a sea of white coats in the corner, students standing there, watching, and their eyes are huge, and because they see my face and it just looks like nothing that they've ever seen.
So ultimately you were admitted to the hospital and then soon thereafter put in a 7-day induced coma, right?
Yeah, I had texted Greg that I was cold, and that's probably the last thing I remember. I said, "Can you bring a blanket?" But they had said, "We need to intubate you now." So I don't remember any of that. It was literally, they said, "We have to put a tube or you're going to lose your airway completely." She had scoped me and looked down my throat and she goes, "Number one, I can't believe you drove yourself to the ER." But she said, "If I don't intubate you now, you will completely lose your airway." And so they intubated and tubed me. And so by the time Greg got there, I was already unconscious and intubated. And then it was a week later that I woke up.
So before we go down that path a little bit, so you drove yourself to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
How far a drive was that?
Like 20 minutes, 20,
15,
25.
20 minutes.
So that's a serious amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a difficult process for you to be cognitively alert in the middle of the night, knowing your medical condition?
Again, I think I just didn't really think it was, I mean, I knew that it wasn't right, but I didn't know my airway was completely going away. I mean, I knew I was having a difficult, and I knew it was getting serious enough to go to the ER. I knew I didn't feel well at all. So even driving there, from our house where we lived, it's just definitely a lot of stoplights, and, it's the middle of the night, and I can remember walking in and everything. But yeah, I think I know I didn't understand the severity. I think I was so focused on what was going on with my mom and worried about the kids and everything, and had been gone a week, that it didn't really click with me that it was as severe as it was.
Yeah. So Greg, you were taking care of your children at the time, then getting them on the bus, whatever, and then I assume you went to the hospital. When you first reached Erica, do you recall your feelings, that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it was, Erica had to go through it with me, seeing me, vented, but to see her vented was just like, okay, this is Superwoman. To see Superwoman being vented is not a good sight to see. And so I got a true glimpse of what she went through, and I didn't like it at all. And I was worried, definitely. And just rightfully so. I mean, she's my best friend, my partner in crime. She's my wife. And, to see somebody go through that, it's hard.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it wasn't a fun feeling to have.
So when you awoke, Erica, I understand you struggled with trust and feelings and feelings, fears of abandonment. What caused that fear, and how did you overcome those thoughts?
It was the hallucinations that go along with the medication that they use to medically put you in a coma. So it causes hallucinations, and it really, for me, I think your mind wants to create a story because there's stuff happening, and you're asleep, but yet your body still knows, and your brain is still functioning, right? So it's creating a story of what's going on. I know there's some people that have been in ICU where they'll say, I remember hearing people or anything. I remember smell, like sanitizer, like hospital grade sanitizer to this day. Like if I smell that, it takes you back there. It absolutely takes me back. And it just is like it is a smell that is definitely a trigger. But when I woke up, I thought Greg had never been there because my mind created a story of what was really going on. I was restrained because I had a tube. I had the airway tube, right? And so, somebody's going to try to pull it if you have any consciousness to you. And so I was restrained. I was restrained on the bed. My legs were restrained. I also had things that were keeping blood clots from happening. So I have, this bag that's like on my legs that's collapsing in and out, in and out, in and out to keep from forming clots. Well, that squeezes on your legs. So that was creating a story in me that I honestly thought I was being tortured for a week. My visions of what I had with the hallucinations was that I was tied up in the basement of the hospital. Apparently my mind knew that I had been to the hospital, and I was just like in some dark room, and I was tied and being tortured for a week. So when I woke up, I was so upset that he never saved me. He never came to get me because it was just me in this space. Yeah. And that was a story that, the drugs created. Right.
So. What were the doctors telling you?
Basically that she definitely had an allergic reaction to the Ziplomax. And like she mentioned before, she's had it many a times before. But we don't know why the reaction happened, at that particular point in time and not earlier. the fact that they caught, or she came in at the right time, because if it was any later, she would have definitely have died, because the obstruction of her airways was so closed off that we got, she got in there as, at the right time, got in quickly, and we just now more of a waiting time period of, we didn't know how long it was going to take for the swelling to go down in order for her to become, get off the ventilation,
right?
So she can be on her own, eating on her own, breathing on her own, those kinds of things. So that's all they said was just, it's a waiting game until the swelling goes down.
Were you guys confident, maybe you more so, Greg, that she was going to be fine and recover because the swelling ultimately would go down?
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of days, you definitely don't know. You're not as confident. But then as, she was progressing, that's when the confidence started coming back in. She was following along with what the doctor said was going to happen. So that builds the confidence right there. But again, you don't know the aftermath.
Right.
What's it going to look like after she's off ventilation, she's on her own. We just didn't know any of that. So confident she's going to live, just didn't know what it was going to look like afterwards.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that your medical training as a nurse really served you well to alert you to the idea you need to go to the hospital?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't imagine if I didn't have that. I think that's probably the hard part for Greg when he went through this too, is that whenever we've had medical stuff in our family, especially even with Greg, I'm the one that kind of knows what's going on and can be the translator. In this instant, when I'm unconscious, there's no way to tell him that this is what's going on, this is what to expect. So it was definitely a role reversal for that. And
so you both have said it a couple of times, so I need to ask. So what was going on with Greg that was serious?
Well, he's had a lot. We've had a lot.
Yeah. So at 21, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's. And that was after my sophomore year in college. And then as a result of the chemo and mainly the radiation was 30 days straight. And it burned all my arteries around my heart, because that's where the cancer was, that it created scar tissue. And so didn't realize that it was going to be an issue later on in life. And then we were married, a few months, 6 months or so, and we went on a run. And I was starting to feel like, there's something wrong with my ring finger. It's like, and maybe it's because I have a ring on. We're married, and this is just odd.
Yeah. Well, he stopped running too. Like he was, and I mean, I definitely more fit then, but he was running, stadium stairs with his team and everything. And he's like stopping, and I'm like, okay, wait, you're way more in shape with me. Yeah. Why are you stopping? He's like, well, I just can't I feel like I can't expand my lungs. And I was like, this is not right. Like how long has this been going on? So it's like, well, I've been feeling a little bit of stuff when I'm running the stadium stairs. So we ended up, I said, we need to, that worries me. Just knowing his medical history, I said, we need to call I actually want to call your oncologist and ask. And so we did. And we went and met his oncologist. We were at Virginia Tech at that time and went up to his oncologist in Indiana. And he said, I've seen cases of coronary artery disease with patients I treated the way I treated you. And he said, I really need to see if, I would recommend you see a cardiologist. And so he did. And he went and saw a cardiologist, and his left main was 90% blocked. His other arteries were...
Three of the four were 90%. One was 10% blocked. So I was Erica got me an appointment with, our family doctor, do a stress test.
He failed the stress test.
Within 5 minutes.
Yeah, his ST
wave
went
12.
down.
I got to 5.
Yeah, it didn't.
It wasn't a good test.
They pulled him off the treadmill.
It was a bad test.
Yeah.
They pulled him off and said, you failed that, and did a cardiac cath, and they found all the blockage and said we need to do, surgery. So he ended up they said they thought he was going to do a triple bypass. He ended up doing a quad. So he had a quad bypass.
And how old were you at that point?
33, 34?
34,
yeah.
35-ish.
Yeah. He's this young, skinny coach, I'm used to patients being in cardiac ICU that I've seen, and they're big, overweight, huge gut. Right. He weighed 150, 155 maybe, and they're like, all the nurses and stuff are like, this guy is like fit, like, I can't believe he's, this, but, cancer.
So you had quadruple bypass.
Mm-hmm.
How are you today? How's your health today?
I think it's pretty good.
Good, but now he has a mechanical valve because he had another surgery for that.
Really?
Yeah, because the radiation also burned one of my valves. They said later on, you're going to have this replaced as well. So, yeah, as my wife says, I'm TikTok croc.
He says, he has you can hear it. Yeah, he's my TikTok croc. So
we've had our share of
on that
things.
one, he was out shoveling snow, and he had cardiac follow-up, obviously, because of his bypass, but he had a recent test, and he had actually the result on the countertop in the kitchen. And he's out shoveling snow, and he's like stopping, and I'm like, I open the door, you okay? Yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, have you told your cardiologist that you're experiencing a little bit of issue when you shovel snow? Because that's
Probably
pretty
not.
indicative of something else we need to look at. And he called him, and he said, you need to come right in. And that's when he got his mechanical valve. So, yeah.
Back to your story, Erica. 22 days after you were put in that induced coma, your mom passed away. Because you were in the hospital, weren't strong enough, you didn't get to travel to see her before she passed, which had to be difficult.
Right.
Speak to the difficulty that played in your life, not being able to see your mom before she went home.
We didn't really have any unfinished business, though, so that was good because, I had been up there several times. I didn't get to be with her when she went home to Jesus in that final breath. I definitely, after I got out of ICU, it was an impossibility. My mom didn't even know I had been in ICU.
Okay.
It kind of kept it from her. She was dealing with enough.
Yeah.
I think it would have really hurt her.
Right.
We kind of joke too that, I almost beat her there, but she would have been so mad if I'd have been there. She'd have been like, you get back down there and raise those kids. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
It was hard because I would have, when you become a mother, you watch your children come into this world, right?
Right.
And it's hard that I wasn't there when she passed. My mom was a nurse too. She was the rock of our family. And I always say to people that experience cancer stuff, for me, watching my mom, it was like watching rock turn to sand. And that is so hard when you have somebody that has just been such a rock, and that transition is difficult. But I know where mom is.
Right.
I know she's loving on a bunch of babies and planting a whole bunch of flowers. And I know, Jesus was the most important thing to my mom. So
That's comforting.
I'm sad that I don't get to see her now, but I know this is just a blink.
Right.
I know our life is just a blink.
Right.
How can you compare, even if you live 100 years, how can you compare 100 years to eternity? You just can't even.
No.
Yeah.
So in Romans, a famous scripture passage is, all things work together for good for those who love God and called according to his purpose. Oftentimes that verse is taken out of context, but through your situations, and I'm going to now say both, your medical condition and what you've gone through as well, Greg, what good has come out of those medical crises?
I think a lot of good. For me, and that's probably the sub-story, but maybe it isn't the sub-story, is that I was definitely in a faith drift at that point in my life in 2014. There were, things that it's easier to say that maybe that when you're in a secular, we're blessed here to be at Cedarville because we're in a culture and we're in a community that we don't have the same maybe angst and distractions that a lot of other workplaces have. But I definitely had, things that were in my life that weren't, I was in a drift. And I think sometimes when you're in a drift, God's going to let you drift, but he's going to come after you. And sometimes he needs to do drastic things to pull you out of that drift. And for me, I think that's the biggest thing, is that it was a shakeup for me. It was a rocking and a pushing out of the boat.
When you say shakeup, what is that? Can you put that into words, a picture of what that looked like?
Well, when you go through something where you're really on the cusp of death.
Right.
I mean, and the hallucinations that I had really made me feel like, I know scripture. I know what hell, I don't know. I know from what the Bible says what hell is like.
Right.
But what I experienced, it was a complete abandonment, and it was like for me, it was like a separation from everything. And I felt so in that moment, completely separated from God. And so that coming out of that, just really brought me back into the fold of like, you're not where you need to be. You've drifted so far. A pastor of ours in Toledo one time had a sermon. He talked about when parents drift, they tend to drift. If you're thinking of your faith drifting, and you're 3 steps back in your drift. Well, the problem is statistically, if a parent is drifting, your kids are going to drift an additional 3 steps from your parents. So that means your kids are 6 steps in a drift.
Right.
Consequently, if that drift continues, it'll pass down to their children. So that's another 9 steps back in a drift. So when you're looking at where your faith should be, and if your grandchildren are 9 steps back, your children are 6 steps back, like you can't afford to be in a drift.
No, you can't. So where were you in this drift story? Was your faith strong during your crisis and then through Erica's, or were you similar?
He's always rock solid. He's going to have rubies and everything. He's.
When I was diagnosed with cancer, it was one of those things where I didn't know, but it was just like life was easy. Grew up in the church with my, mom and dad, had wonderful Christian siblings. Grew up with FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, because my dad was the huddle leader and stuff like that. So, but it was just like one of those things where it's like life was easy. It was good. When I went to college at Westmont College, that's when I saw and heard of other people's stories of where they once were to where they were, where they are now at that particular point in time. And one of the stories that just resonates with me to this day is one of my friends. His dad was a high up CEO of a major corporation, and him and his brother lived a life of partying. And when I say partying, they were partying hard. And his wake up call was at one of the parties, he received laced LSD. He almost died, and he converted his life, gave his life up to Christ, became a Christian. And as far as I know, he's, in the ministry right now. But something like that altered his life. I'm thinking, it hasn't happened to me. Why is this so easy? But then when I did hear the news I had cancer, there was just an absolute peace about it, knowing that it's going to be okay. And I just felt God's peace over me, and just like, this is going to be okay. But just, you got to come back to me though. You have to dive further into your faith. And just that moment there was just like, I'm not, I'm in a good place, but I'm not where I need to be. Yeah. And so that was a wake up call in that regard. And so, you asked the question about, the things that came out of it. I think for both of us, is just our faith has grown and our reliance upon God has grown so much more that if we did not go through these situations, these life events, I think our faith would have been still there. But as Erica was saying, it's like, I don't think we would have grown as much as we had because of the events. And with those, with Erica's story, big time, is one of those things where we can now talk to other people that are going through the same situation, been ventilated, gone through medical issues, and just have an empathetic heart and ears to listen, and just let them know that we're there for them. And I think that's been the biggest impact that these medical events that we both have incurred have allowed us to do, is not just, allow us to grow in our faith, but allow us to minister to other people.
So as Cedarville employees, and the story you've already outlined, how has the Cedarville community come alongside you to encourage you in your faith? And for those who know your story, I'm sure we've reached out to you. But how has the community here at Cedarville embraced you guys?
I think so many times we don't want to be real. We don't want to be authentic. It's easy to keep things at a superficial level, but if you're vulnerable and transparent in your life experiences, and especially in your faith, what's better than that?
Yeah. So as we begin to conclude today's program, I have a few more questions, but one is, I'll use the movie War Room as an example. In the movie War Room, the one lady has a prayer room. Mm-hmm. You have a prayer room too, I understand. Mm-hmm. Speak to your prayer room and the importance you put on prayer on a daily basis. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, which is interesting, actually, I started that shortly after I started after ICU. Okay. It was my closet. When we lived in Toledo, we had our own closets. We didn't share a master closet. And so on the back of my door, on the inside of the door, the Bible tells us to go into your room and close the door, right? So what's not seen. And so I would literally write any scrap of paper and just write, and my back door was plastered with scripture or with prayers and scripture. So much that I have a notebook where I've taken those off when we moved, and I've put that in there. When we got here, I have a bulletin board at home. It's in our home office that has the same thing. And then at work here in my office, I have one behind my door, and it's filled with anything from our Greg's team players that have gone through loss of family members, just any little thing. I guess prayer for me has become so important because, one, it's that one-on-one conversation with God, right? And we have direct access. Jesus gave us that, right? And after this whole experience for me, my biggest thing is I don't want an opportunity to come that I miss. I'm so afraid to get to heaven and God's going to be like, I put that right in front of you and you didn't even see it. So for me, it's like if I tell you I'm praying for you, if I know of something that's going on in your life and I tell you I'm praying for it, I mean it. That isn't just empty words. You're on my wall. Yeah. And for me, I'm a visual person, so having the prayers written down on the wall. Many times I'll just stop and I'll just touch it and I'll pray. And what's even cooler is I've had people come back. We've had things like a staff member lost a dog. They couldn't find their dog. I just prayed that the dog would come back. I have now over the top of it answered. They found a dog. There's things like that it just, when you can look back on your prayers and how much you pray, but do you know how much he actually answers and how he answers, and actually look back on it? You're like, wow. And he may have answered it not in the way you thought. Correct. But of course he knows better. He knows what, is better for us. He's going to give us our answer.
He will. So knowing that you document, all the people you're praying for and what the requests are, you obviously, you mentioned this, you see answers. So when you see answers, regardless of what they may be, how does that encourage your faith?
Obviously, it shows me that God listens, right? And that God cares. And, we know that not every prayer that we pray is going to be something that he's maybe going to fulfill in our own mindset. Because my prayer is always too that it's in his will, right? Yeah. It really needs to be, he knows what's best for us. I prayed when we were dating that, the relationship would be what he wants. We actually broke up. But I prayed that God would turn his heart, 360, because I was just like, he literally needs to come back, and be really in this or not. And I think, prayer has just been something that has definitely developed, but way more so now since my medical issue.
So when you see that with Erica, how encouraging is it for you, Greg?
Oh, it's definitely encouraging. Just because she has come such a long way. She's always a Christian, since 8 or 10, when she became a Christian, asked Christ into her life. But to see the growth, it has impacted our marriage in a positive way. Yeah. And it translates in how she's relational to other people. And because they're, relying upon prayer is that, like she said, is that constant communication with Christ, living abundantly in Christ's life, and just having that relationship has allowed her to continue to grow in her faith, but also we see it, she's living out her faith, and it's through prayer. So it's been great to see that.
That's great. So my final question, because we are out of time, is how do you both maintain a relentless pursuit of Jesus every day in your life?
It's, again, for me, it's identifying who I am, and my identity is in Christ. And if my identity is in Christ and I need to continue to live as Christ did, what was his examples? And it's always, living a godly life in prayer, serving others, doing all those things that when Christ was here for those 33 years, especially the latter parts of his ministry, it's like he was a true embodiment, true example. And to know that, that we're sinners, we're always going to come up short, but yet there's no reason why we can't strive for excellence.
No.
And striving to be like Christ is not a bad thing. And in the way the world is now, it's like there has to be not a place, it's not a place, but someone to go to for guidance, to give us peace, to give us comfort, to give us hope. There's nothing in this world that will ever give us that except for Christ. So knowing that, it's like there's that relentless pursuit to be like Christ, to continue to follow him. And because this world's offering us none of that. And it's like, why not, follow and pursue a Christ who loves us and a God who loves us unconditionally, pursue them for us to pursue him without any reasons why not to, I guess, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. How about you, Erica? I mean, because as you said, he relentlessly pursued you all the way, even through that coma. How do you pursue him faithfully each day?
So one of the things that I came out with after being asleep for a week was that I felt like the whole Bible verse of "Depart from me, I never knew you." That was something that just kind of resonated with me. I knew that I was a Christian. I knew that I was saved. I knew that I was sealed, but it was the knowing. It was that knowing part that really terrified me. I was worried that he was going to be like, but I don't really know you. You're saved, but I don't really know you.
Yeah.
And so it really just ignited a pursuit of Jesus with I can't even describe it other than just running after. I love Phil Wickman because I'm just envisioning running after Jesus because he ran after me. It's like that the whole 99, right?
Yeah.
I definitely was the one, and I do feel like he definitely pursued me. So now the only thing I can do is pursue him back.
Greg and Erica, I really enjoyed the conversation. Your transparency of sharing your story. Glad we're colleagues at Cedarville University, and thanks for joining me this week on the Cedarville Stories Podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thank you for listening to the Cedarville Stories Podcast, brought to you by Cedarville University. To learn more about Cedarville University, visit our website at cedarville.edu. And be sure to come back next week when we'll share another Cedarville story for God's glory.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.